Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, the much-anticipated Governor Rendell's 7th annual budget address was given to the Pennsylvania legislature last week, and guess what? A lot of surprises in it. We're going to talk about that, and then we're going to get an energy update, an important topic, couple of topics that we want to deal with the energy bill. That and more after these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back again. Well, guess what? For the next 4 or 5 months, you know what we're going to be debating. It's going to be the big news. It's Governor Rendell's budget. It's a deficit. The state has a $2.3 billion deficit. This is part of the recession that everyone has been talking about both in Harrisburg and in Washington. We're going to get into the details of the governor's budget with two of the state's leading journalists. Joining me is Robert Swift with Times-Shamrock newspapers, a frequent guest on the program, and Matt Belanger. He's a reporter with WGAL. All right, gentlemen, let's get down to terms here. Robert, let me start with you. You're the veteran. You've been around a long time. Long speech, lots of big topics in. Serious matter, right?
Yeah, serious matter. Terry, was years like these when governors have their backs against the wall because of declining tax revenue and they need to balance the budget under state law, that you start to see the wild card, the surprises in the budgets. Yeah. And Rendell certainly lived up to that this week, returning to something the state's never had, a severance tax on natural gas production, going back to something that was long contention, video poker for college aid. And also in there are just a lot of program cuts. State institution closings, we have not seen that since 1991. Yeah.
Matt, let's sort of go through the highlights for our viewers now. A lot of this has been reported on this week, but this is a pretty serious budget. I mean, it's a 0.2%, I think you reported out, a 0.2% cut.
Right.
If you don't include the stimulus money. Go over some of the big picture items for our viewers.
I really think the governor was trying to strike a balance here. He really wanted to not give up any of the progress. He made that very clear in his address that the state has made. But again, he also made it clear that the state was facing unprecedented economic troubles, and the cuts, quite frankly, were going to be very painful. Right out of the gate, one of the biggest headlines was certainly the 2,995 positions, he says, may need to be eliminated, will probably need to be eliminated to balance that budget. And, of course, that's sending a strong message to the labor unions.
Yeah, before we get to some of the other items, historically, this is not the first time that we've had layoffs and pay freezes and furloughs. Now, furloughs different than layoffs. I mean, we have a long history of doing that in this state, well back into, the pre- and post-Civil War period in this state.
Well, and even back in 1991, Governor Casey, at this time, same time of year, was busy furloughing people, middle management, and having pay cuts. Getting ready for January, February, getting ready for a June budget battle. So this is once again back in '77 we had some of this going on.
Yeah. And so not unusual.
Yeah, not unusual.
Matt, let's talk about the taxes. You've also been reporting about them. Robert mentioned them in passing. Let's sort of go through what he thinks ought to be increased as part of the, to generate more revenue for programs.
Well, he's clearly made it clear that he does not want any broad-based tax increases, but there are a number of areas where he plans on kicking things up a little bit, namely on tobacco products. He wants another 10 cents added to the tax on a pack of cigarettes, and he certainly made it clear that he wants to tax other smokeless tobacco products and cigars for the first time in the state. So those are two biggies.
Yeah. Let's talk about you mentioned earlier the Marcellus Shale. That's this formation out of which you get natural gas, and he wants to tax that, which has not been taxed before. The Marcellus Shale, for you viewers out there, that formation runs from the southwest up around the northeastern part of the state, not so much in central and in the eastern part of the state. What's he wanting? What's the purpose of that?
It's called a severance tax, because you're severing natural resource from the ground, and he wants to have a 5% severance tax on the well itself.
Yeah.
And then they measure natural gas by cubic feet, a 4.7 cents tax on every 1,000 cubic feet produced out of the wells. Now, he's saying this is just like West Virginia's tax, that it's not, and he's giving assurances that it won't deter drilling. When you look at most the states that have these kind of severance taxes, Wyoming, Texas, this is not as high as those states that he's proposing. Republicans are leery of this proposal because they are concerned that it would what they call an emerging industry in terms of deep gas drilling. It would hurt, but this is certainly going to be one of the big battles over. You know.
Yeah, we only have a minute left in this segment, but Matt, one of the things he's proposed is allowing the counties to use a 1% sales tax. You know, we have 6% now, 1%. You know, that's also been suggested before. So there are a number of things in here that they've been around, but he's really pushing them to allow for all this alternative revenues that he thinks he needs to get this budget balanced. Is there any? Have you heard anything about the controversy surrounding these taxes? Is this going to be, you think, from your judgment, not going to be easy, is it?
No, I think it's obviously going to be one of the biggest fights to get a budget passed that we've seen at the state capitol.
Good point.
Obviously, because we've been, unprecedented economic times, going to lead to an unprecedented fight, I think, to meet that June 30th deadline. But I think just overall, there are a lot of Republican lawmakers out there who when they heard this address, the governor harped on how bad the economic situation is, but then they said we still see increases in other areas of the budget, and that is going to be probably one of the sticking points.
You're shaking your head. We're going to run. Hold that. We're going to run to a break. We'll be back after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PAConstructionJobs.com. For more information about rewarding careers in the highway construction industry, visit PAConstructionJobs.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back for our budget. I'm going to call it a review, but who knows? We're just getting started in a process that is expected to go on for a long time with Matt Belanger from WGAL-TV and Robert Swift with Times-Shamrock. Matt, give us some perspective on this in terms of job cuts versus expansions of programs. Give us some perspective here.
The governor really took almost like a dual approach. On one hand, he's cut 101 programs, or proposing to cut 101 state programs that he says are inefficient or no longer appropriate in the economic climate. 8.8% across much of the board, with only a few exceptions out there for corrections in some other areas like public welfare. But on the other hand, he's proposing increases to things like education and infrastructure improvements like roads and bridge repairs. And I think Republicans are really taken aback by that. They say many of them say there shouldn't be any increases in a budget when we're faced with this tough economic climate.
You're hearing the same thing, right?
Yeah. The Republicans, this is going to be a tough road to hoe in the next coming months, to get votes for a lot
so
of this.
Look, we've been through budgets that can't get done by June 30. We've had just, how many? We didn't have them so much during the Ridge years when Republicans controlled both chambers and we had surpluses, but boy, we had them in the 80s and particularly in the 70s. And is your expectation that on June 30 we're still going to be around debating this budget?
We'll be debating now. The big wild card that's different is the governor says that he has authority to just lay off workers, no more payless paydays. And the specter of that can start to, whether that would end up in a court again, if it got too long, the specter of that can push people.
Well, I want to return to something that is really controversial, and it's, of course, big news. Every time you turn around, it leads the story. Video poker. Now, I want you to give us the perspective in a minute, but what's the governor trying to do there with the video poker proposal? He's
trying to basically get these machines put into local bar-type situations, a small number of them, and hoping to, of course, use the revenue that they would generate. I think it's a 50% tax on the profits from the machines, but then use the remaining revenue, obviously, to help education in the state.
So he's talking about if I got this right, there's something like the proposal would call for 70,000 machines in, as Matt points out, in bars and restaurants and private clubs. 5 limited to 5 per, that's a small amount, 5 per operation, right?
Yeah.
But there's a long, is this new?
This video poker and casinos and riverboat gambling have been a fight for 30 years. They were all in contention. At one time, there was a slogan, slots for tots. There was a proposal you use slots for early education. Well, now we have video poker for, for college tuition.
Yeah. He's
just advanced it. So we're, and many, I was surprised Senator Robert Mello, the Democratic leader, was quite against the proposal.
Really?
So he doesn't want to see video poker in every tavern on Main Street. Now, of course, he's worried about the casino revenue.
So go ahead.
I think that because the casinos and the slot machines, the slots parlors in the States are so new, there's still a feeling that we're still just experimenting with this gaming situation.
2004 is when the gaming law was enacted. Go ahead.
Very new, and I think people are very hesitant, lawmakers are very hesitant to move forward with any other type of gaming in the state until they see how this first experiment goes.
Well, I think I read one article that said, if we go ahead with 70,000 video poker machines, that would be more poker machines than slot machines currently in the state. Now, there are 3 venues that are still not up. We have no operations in Philadelphia or in Pittsburgh. Go ahead.
Governor Rendell, I thought they were trying to paint this, he was calling this entertainment. This has never been considered entertainment. This is what the opponents call big-time gambling.
All right, we're out of time, but look, we'll have you back. But let's draw this to conclusion. All that you're hearing from the folks you've interviewed is simple. Long time, we're going to be here a long time. A lot of this is controversial. You expect a good bit of amending through the process, would you expect?
No, absolutely. I think the way to sum this up, and what I've been hearing from lawmakers in both parties, this is going to be one of the nastiest deals hashed out of the state capitol.
Look for the real proposals to emerge, in June. Some of these proposals may be a cover, they may be something out there to get people, don't like this. Well, what's your alternative, the governor said.
And you know that one of the things that Governor Rendell has been, I've noticed in just, writing about and observing him for all these years, he's pretty flexible. He's not ideologically bent. He's very pragmatic. If they come up with another way to do his programs, we didn't talk about health care. We're going to do some stuff in future programming about that, adult basic covering all these people. The Senate has a different way to do this. Senate Republicans have a different idea. Robert, you know this. He's pretty pragmatic. He wants to get at the end product.
He showed that in his speech this week.
Yeah.
That he's willing to strike out in new directions to accomplish his goals. That was what the speech was all about.
All right. Thanks for coming up. All right. We're going to have an energy discussion, a very, very important. Energy is on the minds of everybody. Lots of changes going on in the environment. We'll talk with Mike Love about that following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Joining me as often is the case is Mike Love with the Energy Association of Pennsylvania. He's the president. Energy, I'll tell you, Mike, it's been a tough winter in this state, but we'll skip that for the moment and go to the real. You're smiling there. It has been a tough winter, hasn't it?
It has been a tough winter, and when it is either very cold or very hot, people use energy, and that gets expensive.
Yeah. Well, let's go. I want to go through a couple of things. I want to talk. In the last segment, we briefly touched on Marcellus Shale, this formation out of which you get natural gas, which a lot of folks are looking to as a way to do a lot of things, to increase our supply, plus, now Governor Rendell wants to get a little money out of it. Talk a little bit about what you think is the importance of that formation.
Marcellus Shale probably represents the largest job opportunity that we've had come to this state maybe since gambling. And maybe nothing before that. Natural gas in this state has the reserves to make what we have in terms of coal, which is huge, look small in comparison.
Yeah, wow.
That's how much natural gas is sitting underneath our borders 6,000 to 9,000 feet down. This was gas that was unknown a couple years ago. And until the technology came up in which you can now drill vertically and then drill across horizontally, was this even possible? And so why is this important? Let's take back, you were nice enough to have me on a show a couple years ago when Katrina had driven up the price of natural gas and oil. Because why? We were taking gas from the Gulf Coast.
Right.
Well, if we don't have to rely on the Gulf Coast as much for our gas, it'll be cheaper. We also won't pay the transportation fees to move it up from the Gulf Coast to here or from the Rocky Mountains to here. So that means industrial customers in our state can get gas directly. Right now, we use 22% of the gas that everybody uses in this state comes from this state. This would allow us to get 100% or nearly 100% of our gas from within our borders. It would be tremendous in terms of jobs. Where shale gas has been found down in Oklahoma and Texas, it has led to tens of thousands of jobs. Now, this shale is in New York, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. That's where it's located.
Right.
And each of the three states are trying to develop it. New York jumped on the bandwagon and started doing the typical New York over-bureaucratic fees and et cetera, and the business picked up and moved to Pennsylvania and West Virginia. And so obviously such a new major source is going to be the source of much discussion in this legislative budget.
Now, Governor Rendell wants to tax some of it. How controversial is that? Tax the severance, I guess, at the go-ahead when it's extracted.
Let me answer it this way. The governor, Senator Scarnati, Speaker McCall, I mean, they're facing an unprecedented problem. And so I think it's right to look at issues like Marcellus Shale. What we have to be careful is whatever we decide to do in tax dollars, we don't want to chill the industry before it gets developed. The state is going to make millions and millions on royalties that come from the gas anyway.
Right. So your point is there have to be some balance between discouraging entrepreneurs in the industry from coming in at the same time so that the state can reap some tax benefits from it, correct?
That's right. And what I'm saying to you is, regardless of what is being proposed by the governor or whatever, there is already royalties that come from gas wells. And the state has already recently and smartly, through the governor and the DEP, leased some state land to be used. And they pulled in $194 million from leasing some state land.
All right, we're going to go to a break. When we come back, I want to talk about all these budget proposals. You know, there's stuff in the federal stimulus plan for energy. Governor Rendell, of course, there was a bond issue, lots of environmental activity going on in the state. I want you to kind of summarize where you think that's going for us. All of that and more after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Penn Future, where we believe that every environmental victory grows the economy, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back with Mike Love. He's president of the Energy Association of Pennsylvania. We're talking about energy, and probably, you know, along with healthcare, energy. Just move the recession aside for a moment, or the big topics. Lots of change going on. Give us a quick preview of what's going on with energy in this state. Let's start with the state first. Governor Rendell and the budget. What are the hot items in it?
Well, I think, as I said before, we are in a very difficult time, and so what are we going to do? You know, when you start talking about people losing their jobs, I would, obviously we need to try to see what type of costs can we cut other than jobs. And one of the costs that the governor and a frequent guest on your show, John Hanger, have said and made part of our law is energy conservation and energy efficiency is our policy in this state.
Right.
Now, as part of that law they passed back in June, the legislature and the governor said, electric utilities, you have to reduce people ever-increasing demand for energy, ever-increasing use of energy, and by the way, you have to show a reduction in that from what it was 2 years ago.
Right.
Now, as part of that, they also put a provision in that said, and to get you there, 10% of that reduction has to come from all universities, schools, local government, state government, federal government, and nonprofits. Well, clearly it seems to me that if we're faced with, and we are, some very draconian type things, we should be really enforcing that law and saying to every department head, come in, show me.
Are you saying you're not sure it's being enforced? Is that your question?
It's certainly going to be enforced against the electric utilities. Mm-hmm. But what I'm saying is it also had mandates for other people.
Yeah.
And if we're going to say that conservation energy efficiency is important, and if we don't want to...
That's a good point.
...pains,
yeah. I'm going to do something with that, and I think, in some show upcoming, I think we'll get some people on. That's a great question to see whether the conservation effort is being uniformly applied, consistent with the law, and whether people are... Now, I notice on some colleges I read periodically where they're, doing certain steps to reduce
and they are.
energy.
And some universities have done a great job, and the Thomas Jefferson Hospital outside of Philly has done an incredible job.
Right.
And to the credit of John Hanger and this governor, they have been doing, in some of the departments, in some of the state agencies, audits.
You want consistently applied, right?
That's right. But I would be mistaken if I didn't give them credit for already starting.
We're almost out of time. We got about 30 seconds. But rate caps, scheduled to go off 2010. Should they go off for utilities, electric rates?
Rate caps should go off because if you don't, the requirements of alternative energy will never come about.
Yeah.
Also, you have to deal, if you're going to make wise electric decisions, you have to have the prices that are out in the marketplace.
And people ought to look into these early pay plans, so they don't get stuck with a bill at the end of the day. Hey, thanks for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of PA Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.